people. Even now, I don't feel like Puerto Rico has gotten to a point where they are fully accepting of GLBT people. Um, but at the time, I was scared of like coming out in Puerto Rico, so I kind of like postponed everything until I could find a way to get out of Puerto Rico and get away from my family, because I also didn't want to put a burden to my family. I didn't want to deal with drama that could possibly come from me deciding to go through this journey. So once I moved out of Puerto Rico, then it just happened that I met somebody that helped me find the support that I needed to be able to transition. And Albany, New York seemed to be to have the resources for that, and because of that, I was able to transition and still be able to live my life. You know.
And did you train for wrestling in Puerto Rico?
Yes, I actually started training in Puerto Rico in 1999. My trainer was in the wrestling business. He was known as Pepe Gomez. He used to wrestle for WWC, which is Carlitos Colon promotion in Puerto Rico, and it just happened by casualty. Like I knew that I wanted to do wrestling, and I was just driving one Sunday afternoon to college, and I saw a wrestling show. I stopped by. I asked them if I could train, and they told me to come on Tuesday, and then I began training every week. And 3 months later, I found myself getting a match in the ring, and the rest is history, pretty much.
When you came to America, did you have to change your wrestling style to fit the American style?
Uh, yes and no. Um, Puerto Rico, they work the same side that they work here, like here in the United States, like they work on the left side. It's only when you go to Mexico that they work on the right side. And it's the nature of that of lucha libre. They want to keep it very fast and very moving. But Puerto Rico was more of like, um, if anybody had ever watched matches back in the 80s, Puerto Rico tend to be more of like brawling, but they still do the wrestling style is still similar to what they teach here in the United States. The one thing that I actually decided to change was, and this is because I prefer it that way, was a chain wrestling. So in 2000, I got the opportunity to move to South Jersey, and I got the opportunity to attend a famous school there, and I learned how to change very well. And then when I went back to Puerto Rico a few years later, I tried to incorporate that into my wrestling style more than using the brawling style. In Puerto Rico, a lot of the fans they enjoy the brawling style, like where you just use punches, kicks, and then you go outside and you spend the time outside working your opponent, and even to a point that there are some matches that you end up like bleeding just because the fans like that. But I never liked that style a lot, so I decided to try to go more into the chain wrestling aspect of wrestling. And then when I moved to United States again in 2004, I already was aware of like what kind of style I wanted to use. So it wasn't that different, the adaptation. But the one thing that really took me by surprise was the way that the matches are worked here by workers in the mainland United States versus in Puerto Rico, because in Puerto Rico, some of my matches were called right on the ring. They were not. Work backstage before getting to a ring. In Puerto Rico, you get to a ring and then you end up like wrestling, and you have to keep the ring psychology on your mind and then work from there. You may be lucky if they tell you the end of the match, but sometimes you just didn't know.
And do you also have a background in martial arts?
Yeah. Not many people know that. I'm surprised that you know about that. But yeah, I did when I was younger, I took Taekwondo, and I went up to a green belt.
How do you use that in your wrestling?
I like to use kicks pretty much. So whenever I get a chance, I may throw a kick and a roundhouse kick, but it's not a lot, you know. And but the one martial art that I try to incorporate a lot is the one of like jiu-jitsu. There are some techniques and some holds that I like from there, and I try to find like a way of adapting them to wrestling. But sometimes I don't get the chance to show that. It all depends on what the promoters want to do with me. Um, and now because I'm wrestling, most of the women that I wrestle they are smaller than me, so using submission holds doesn't work for me. I'm using more my size and my power, pretty much.
Do some of the women wrestlers that you face feel you have an unfair advantage over them?
I mean, for anybody that's been in the business, they know that there's no fair advantage at all. However, I that hasn't stopped people from telling me that or saying that they're concerned about me having an advantage, and I just have to laugh at that because honestly, like if you know the nature of the business, you shouldn't even bring that up at all. But I mean, to be honest, from what the audience will see, yes, I may probably have an advantage because I'm 5'7". I work out in the gym. I have muscles, so yeah, I may have a slightly bit of an advantage when it comes to me wrestling some of the women and even some of the men too. You know.
When you started wrestling in New York State, who gave you your first break?
It was World of Sport Wrestling, and at the time it was Dave DeJohn who was running the company, and I remember that I went to one of the shows that they were running, and he asked me pretty much like, "So do you have a pair of boots?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I do have a pair of boots," and so he booked me in that show, and I still remember my opponent. My opponent at the time was Sheesh, and that was one of my first opponent after I moved to New York.
And you've faced women like Kennedy Copeland and Tequila Rose. Who would you say was your biggest rival?
I will say Tequila Rose. I'm not good. Kennedy Copeland was a good opponent, and the matches were interesting because it was speed versus strength. With Rosalie, or at the time she was on Tequila Rose. She's a tough opponent, to be honest with you, and it's I enjoy working with her because of that, because she's always finding a way to push me to my limits, and she's a good worker too. So yeah.
And who would you like to face that you haven't faced yet?
So I will say I would like to go one-on-one against Christina Marie. I also would like to go one-on-one against Riley Shepard one more time. I mentioned both of them because the matches that we have been in the ring sometimes has been like triple threat matches, and I don't feel like that counts. You know, I'd rather do a one-on-one match because that way I can show what I can do in the ring, and they can show what they can do in the ring much better than doing a triple threat. And then one of the person that I would like to wrestle someday will be Kelly Klein from Women of Honor, because she's tough.
Have you been wrestling out of New York State?
Yeah, I've been going to Massachusetts, specifically Ludlow, Massachusetts. I've been wrestling for Battlefront since they started in January of 2018. I also did a few shows the previous year for a different company in Massachusetts too, and I also been going to New York. I went to New Jersey for a seminar one time with Mia Jim, but I haven't gotten the chance to wrestle again in New Jersey. That would be awesome if I could go down there sometime. I also used to wrestle in Puerto Rico, so yeah.
And coming up in a couple weeks, you're back in Massachusetts with Battlefront. Who would you like to face there if you had a choice?
The The last show I wrestled Rosalie, the makeup queen, aka Tequila Rose. Um, Somehow the promoters decided to throw a title in the mix that I was not aware until I am about to get myself to, until I'm about to head to the ring, and then there's a title on the line, and I'm not happy with the fact that I lost the match, and I don't know if there's a clause for a rematch somewhere in the contract. So if they could find a way to book another match between me and Rosalie, that would be fantastic. If not, I want a piece of one of the wrestlers in their roster that betrayed me a few months ago, Cyrus. So yeah, either Tequila Rose or Cyrus. I want to wrestle at the show. So if the management of Battlefront is hearing this, you know what you need to do.
Have you been contacted by the promotion out of New York City, a matter of pride battle?
That's that is a very good question. Not yet. I mean, I support what they're doing down there. I know that they're doing the matter of pride. I'm glad that finally we're having the LGBT community is getting to have their own shows, to have their own promotion going on. I'm glad about that because that gives the opportunity for people in the LGBT community that are doing wrestling to have shows specifically for our community, by our community. But they haven't contacted me to work at show in the past. I know that Rick Cataldo, he asked me if I could go to one of the seminars that Melina was running in the previous show, but for reasons out of my control, I could not go there to the seminar. I would love to wrestle for them. Like, I will, if they contact me and they ask me to wrestle a show, I will totally do it because it's a promotion that is a part of the community, and I'm part of the community too. So I would really love to be part of the company if possible. But to this date, they haven't really contacted me, and I have sent them a message and I told them that I'm willing to wrestle, but we'll see if that happens this year or maybe next year. So who knows?
Have you encountered any other transgender wrestlers?
Yes, I have. I am not the only one out there. There are others like me, male to female transgenders in the wrestling business. I'm not going to say names because that's up for them if they want to come out. I know that when I went to the Women of Honor tryout in 2017, I thought I was the only transgender person there in the seminar, but Alundra Blaze then had a podcast and she interviewed another of the women wrestlers that was at the tryout, and she came out with her story of being transgender too. So I was kind of happy that I was not the only one, the only transgender wrestler out there in the tryout. And then I know another person that is wrestling to this day, and he is a transgender man. So yeah, so I am not the only transgender person in the wrestling business, and I know that there are others like me. So yeah.
And it seems like a time where the LGBT community is having more representation in wrestling. Why is it important for gay wrestlers or transgender wrestlers to come out?
I feel it's important because even in the media today, they are not very. I mean, though the media and TV, it's kind of like changing little by little, and we are having more representation of LGBT people and specifically transgender people in the media. We still don't have enough people in the wrestling business, so I feel it's important to come out because that way we'll give hope to people like or transgender teens that are thinking about getting into the business, you know. So by being out there, you are actually might be inspiring others to follow, and also